Ladies and gentlemen, hello and welcome back once again to the briefing room. Very special day, very special time, very special topic, folks. Yours truly, Eric Kavanaugh, is here. And this is the first part of a multi part series on data catalogs with our good friends from Athena Solutions. They are an expert group in data integration, master data management, and of course, data catalogs, which I would argue are the glue that will hold together information systems going forward. And I'm old enough to remember business dictionaries and business glossaries from 20 and even 30 years ago. And most of them may have been good in terms of the content, but they weren't dynamically connected to other information systems. And as such, they weren't tremendously valuable. It's like data governance. Unless you have a choke point through which your data goes that you can govern and manage, you probably don't have data governance. But we'll talk about some of that stuff in this whole series. We're going to do several shows. We'll also have a findings report and a webinar, probably sometime mid-summer. And we have three experts with us today. It's very exciting. We've got Alla Zaykin. She's going to be taking the lead here. She is a data governance expert. She has been studying this for quite some time and really loves to get into the weeds and understand the business. And she had a really good quote the other day. She said, the nice thing about a data catalog project is that it forces the business to focus. So she understands what takes time, where the time goes, which questions to ask, and that you have to be patient working with the business to really get to the bottom of things and understand what these definitions are. We'll also hear from Kristi Gale. She also is an expert in the BI and data integration world, and she really has excellent skills in working with customers, working with clients, understanding which questions to ask, how to get the right people at the table, because that's really important to get the right folks at the table early in the ball game. And then last but not least, we'll hear from Aaron Wilson, another expert in this space, all three of them Athena principals. And of course, just for some background, I got involved with Athena when our good friend Rick Sherman passed away last year. And I talked to Alex Cangoon, who for years has been running the operation behind the scenes. And I said, you know what? I'm going to step in and help you guys do some go to market stuff and let's do some research. And so here we are today. And so with that, I'm going to hand it off to Alla Zaykin. Take it away. Which data catalog do you need? Walk us through the process.
I'll be happy to. Thank you, Eric. And everyone, thank you very much for joining. I'm excited to start this discussion, which is a very interesting topic. Which data catalog do you need? But I think the even more interesting question is, why do you need it? So I hope that we will address some of for each of these. So I would like to start at the very beginning. Data catalog is in inventory, first and foremost, of your data assets. So I would like to start with the definition and see what the data asset actually is. And it is something that you have, and it is something that you control, and it is something that you expect to get some value from. So is data an asset is another question. I claim that the data can be an asset and the data can be a liability. And we all know what a liability, the bad data, with the poor data quality and all of the other poor attributes. So is data an asset? So to be an asset, I would like to propose that the data needs to be managed and the data needs to be protected. And the data needs to be available to the public that uses the data. But one of the most important things is that the data needs to be understood by the users who want to get value from it. This is where I believe data governance would come into play. And data catalog would come on the radar of an organization for multiple reasons. And data governance could and might not be in the picture. For example, a corporation might have an awesome data glossary. And the only goal of looking into data catalogs would be to implement the data glossary, make it searchable, make it available for public. But in my experience, most often than not, a company feels an urgent need to govern their data assets, to have to create some additional understanding, common understanding, and then they would look into a data catalog as a technology that would make it possible. So I just want to present very quickly a data governance framework that we like to discuss when we talk about this subject. And so, of course, the data assets can be thought of as systems or as data sources. And different types of data is present in each of these data assets. It is helpful, but not necessarily not necessary really to divide data into data domain, but it is very helpful. This gives you an ability to maybe not to boil the ocean and approach data governance by domain or track your progress by domain. So I find data domains helpful, but the focus areas of data governance are usually standard. At this point in the industry, they are fairly standard with some variations. So you would be looking at the people, you would be participating in a data management, the stakeholders of data, maybe a data governance organization or creation of such organization. You would be looking in the processes around data. You would be looking to optimize your data architecture. Metadata management comes into play, and data quality and security and compliance. All of these aspects of data governance are areas where data catalog can make a positive impact. Whether you're building data governance program in a company or not, or you're focusing on a specific thing, like the previous example of data glossary would be in the area of data metadata management. All of these areas of data governance can be positively impacted. I want to step back and talk in principle on a little bit higher level. There is a common way to think about the culture that is being built in the corporation, and that regards, data governance guiding principles come into play. So these are the principles around which a culture of the company would be changing and would become more data-driven. The more of these principles is being implemented or followed, the more reliability and trust you would create around data in the organization. So it is good to follow. And again, data catalog can and we will focus on the features of the specific features of data catalog a little bit later, and Aaron will go there in details. But I want to say that the specific capabilities of data catalog do impact the integrity. They do create a knowledge base around the data catalog with different aspects of the data being available, being searchable, and usable by the user community. Transparency, just exposing a lot of information about the data, such as like the level of data quality and various rules, regulations around data, making it also available to the users would make a big difference. Accountability around data, that is Kristi's domain. Making the stakeholders known, creating data stewardship roles. This is something that implementation of data catalog can move companies forward with. And so down from the just abstract principles to the actual challenges that data catalog can help address. And these are the ones that we come across more often. And I think that they probably are familiar to the audience as well. So when the investment in a data catalog project comes into picture, usually there is some feeling that the bottom line is affected. And the bottom line would be improved if, say, companies would spend less time on producing their reporting. They would spend less time on the impact analysis if they're rolling out a new release. They would spend less time fixing the problems produced by the release if the impact analysis is not done. Data quality, just as a fair estimation of how much people's time cost in dealing with the issues around data would impact the bottom line. So, but all of these challenges can be it's up to the data catalogs, especially with the choices that currently exist in the industry. They can take it.
You bring up a really good point, Alla, on the time spent. And you've spent a lot of time working with these technologies, so you understand the time it takes to go through the different definitions, the stakeholders, understanding the overlaps. But there's a real opportunity cost for not investigating, right? I think that's the key, is trying to balance out how much time are we spending now dealing with data quality issues, dealing with the unknown, versus how much time can we save if we invest the time to make this research and to find out what's good for us. Is that about right?
Yes, it's very important, and it depends on how much you look into each of these aspects of the changing the processes. And I would suggest that all of this time and effort and the level of frustration can be estimated, and the amount can be put in front of people to be a selling point for a data governance project. Yes, so I would like to move on into how to prepare. And I am a big fan of actually an advanced preparation. I guess I'm not a very spontaneous person, but what I want to suggest here is that the more thought is put into thinking about the goals, thinking about the environment, the technical environment that will go into the data catalog, thinking about the data assets that will be included, overall determining the scope and determining the goals would be very beneficial. Whether you move forward with choosing a data catalog vendor, or just look at maybe decide on homegrown solution, or looking just for process improvement. This information, the answers to these questions are very important, because a group of people will become very aware of what the problems are and what can be achieved and how. So formulating your goals around implementation would be an important step. And I would suggest that stakeholders would work within their data organization, dedicate a finite time, but follow through. And when finishing this process, it's a good jumping point, whether to roll back, decide that this is not the time, which is also an important decision, or move forward into the demos, into discussions with vendors, because everybody involved will get much more from these discussions and from the demos themselves.
Yeah, and I'd like to just really quickly interject and say, I'm just guessing here, but in the process, the early stages, as you're discussing, as you're trying to set your objectives, you're trying to determine what you want the outcomes to be, that's an educational process in and of itself. And I'm guessing that there are probably one or two stakeholders in most of these environments who step in and don't think it's necessary. And then in that initial research project or that process, they encounter something, a data definition they maybe didn't expect, or data values they didn't expect to see, which gives them the aha moment to realize, wait a minute, I guess we do need to dig deeper into this, because I've been relying on this definition and this team has been relying on that definition. Have you seen that happen early in projects where someone who was skeptical has the aha moment and then is on board?
Definitely. People, plainly speaking, people on a, in a positive sense, people get excited about what's possible, because at this point, a lot of information are online, and people can get into the features, they can review the features and can have a sense of what is possible. So in these discussions, in thinking how these features can be stood up in the environment, within the data architecture, within the corporation, and what benefits they would bring, I think that is a very positive thing in itself. How, as I mentioned before, the other thing is that maybe there are some obstacles that need to be overcome. For example, in defining the scope, the group would target certain data domains, and it wouldn't be possible to bring them in for a variety of reasons. So this is again, the more information, the better in advance.
Mm-hmm.
So in terms of choosing, there is, of course, plenty. And you can choose by size, you can choose by taste, you can choose by color, you can choose by texture. And I am talking about this picture, of course, because I feel like it gives a nice representation of the market for data catalogs at the moment. I feel that there is a great variety of offerings right now, and depending on the requirements, again, and depending on the constraints, it's possible to custom choose a product for your company, because as much as in general, when we're speaking about data catalog, we're talking about the whole corporation is using it and all of that. In some cases, this is not the goal. And we as consultants, we have to be mindful of the wishes of each of the clients. So moving from tomatoes to the data catalog vendors, I am suggesting this simple tool that would allow to capture the score and that would later influence the decision of choosing a certain data catalog vendor. So we, on the left-hand side, you basically list the requirement. You list the requirements. But I want to emphasize that not only the features are part of the requirements, but also desired level of integration with current architecture, whether it's a cloud or on-prem, the cost, of course, and also how much you want support from the vendor. And, I hear very, very wonderful stories about, different programs that vendors are offering to start the companies up, and like how quick they can roll out their products right now. So, this tool, which a very simple approach, I would say. It can be done where every participant who is attending the demos and the presentation fills this out, or it can be done as a group where it is a little bit more streamlined when a group decides after a demo with each vendor, a group decides what the scores are, and this helps move along a little bit faster. So after all of this very creative, very meticulous, and very groundbreaking work, what are the signs of success? And I listed them here, but I want to kind of reframe it a little bit. These are the signs of success, but do you want to measure your success when you're reporting to your management? You want to report on the signs of success. So some of the positives are quantitative, which is, they describe by the number. Some qualitative that are described by describing an improvement, describing an improvement. So those two are very important. Like, for example, the number of critical data elements defined, the number of data sets included in a data catalog, number of new definition created by month. All of this are the qualitative signs of success. But quantitative would be the improved user experience less of a frustration around the impact analysis, availability of information in search, just overall more pleasant experience around like a day-to-day business, a day-to-day work for the main data users. So to summarize, each user should have this wonderful smile at the end of their workday.
A smile speaks 1,000 words.
I believe so, really, and overall mood, because I'm very familiar firsthand with the level of frustration when people are trying but not getting where they want to be, essentially.
Mhm. Yeah, that's one of my soapbox topics as well is morale. And employee morale is really important for an organization to succeed. And to your point, when the user experience is enhanced because people have confidence in the data that they're using and the definitions that they're managing, that they're working with, that morale goes up and they take chances. I kind of mentioned that concept of opportunity cost early in the call, because if there is not trust, if there is not confidence, people are just not going to try things, and they're going to go with gut instinct, and they're going to circumvent protocols and processes and policies and all these things. They're just going to do what they're going to do. And that's not what you want. You want people to have confidence in the data, in the reports, in the analysis that they're seeing. You want confidence that people are being heard and understood. And you want to be able to get somewhere and make tangible progress. And I'm guessing that's also real key to the success here is to map out the process, give yourself enough time to research. Make sure you have all the right people at the table. We'll talk to Aaron about that in a minute and Kristi as well. Make sure the right people are there and get their skin in the game. Because if you get them on the front end early in the ball game, that is going to pay tremendous dividends down the road. Even if it takes longer than expected, at least they knew where they were going, they knew where you were going, and they have confidence in that process. And that's what yields success, right, Alla?
I agree. I couldn't agree with you more. It is so important that there is a progress moving forward, and the progress is quantifiable also, if that is possible. So we don't want the projects to be stuck in the initial phases. We want the culture to change. We want improvement to be noticeable, and overall morale improve.
Absolutely.
So I want to pass it to Aaron, maybe to talk a little bit more in depth about the features, the main features in a data catalog.
Yeah, Aaron, dive in.
All right. Well, thank you, Alla, and thank you, Eric, and thank you everyone for attending. As Eric mentioned in the very beginning, the way I like to think about data catalog is it starts with the idea, kind of the old school idea of the data dictionary, but it, which is of course something that's been in use in companies for a long time now. But data catalog brings in some very significant value adds around that concept, and some additional features which are very, very helpful, to the point where I think that's why data catalog is now being considered kind of a class of its own in terms of product. So let's talk about a few of those. Some of those features, by the way, contribute to being able to build your data library, dictionary, whatever you want to call it, easier, in an easier fashion. Some of them are really more centered around ease of use, for the end users, both of which are important. Starting with harvesting. So harvesting is really, it's a technology. There's a bit of AI that's being employed in here where an algorithm can really go in and scan your data assets, for example, your data warehouses, perhaps your ETL jobs, your reporting tools, and extract out what the relevant metadata is. So things like data terms, data transformations, in fact, can actually be gleaned from the underlying data. I don't want to undersell the fact that there's definitely a certain amount of curation involved. All right, this is not something where we take what like anything else with AI, we don't just take what the AI gives us. But given the fact that we understand there's going to be curation by a human being, the initial heavy lift of pulling that relevant metadata together is rendered a lot easier by harvesting tools. which is a good lead in to lineage, because once we have all of our relevant metadata in front of us and we've done some curation on it, what we can really do is put together, construct a metadata model. And that's what allows us to do lineage. And the good thing about lineage in a data catalog environment where you're doing it on an abstraction layer, a metadata model, let's say, is, I mean, I don't know how many times, probably all of us have, in order to get lineage, in order to analyze data, the origin of a particular piece of data, trace it back or trace it forwards in terms of data impact, you oftentimes wind up having to talk to your IT resources and really delve into the actual data architecture, the actual data assets themselves. Once you have an extraction layer, a metadata model, you really do not need to do that. It makes lineage much, much easier. Again, there is some curation involved, but the algorithms that these products feature can help you establish those linkages and develop your metadata model. And with some curation, then you have an abstracted data model, which means it gets you out of the business of having to delve into, oh my gosh, well, where does this data point come from? I have to talk to the guys down in IT, trace through a bunch of SQL code. This will get you to a much better place as far as lineage is concerned. Interactivity and glossary. In some ways, this is kind of the holy grail, and what has a big piece of what has been missing from data dictionaries. The idea of having participation from users across the organization. You want your data SMEs, your data stewards, etc., to be able to go in, and if they see a data definition that isn't quite right, or if a data definition that is missing, you want them to be empowered and able to go ahead and add those, modify those, whatever the case may be. So these interactive tools of being able to, for a user to come in, comment on a particular data element, add a data definition. You can even have tools that will allow for a workflow. So a data steward might come in and suggest a change, but it might then go through a review process. So data catalog tools, the good data catalog tools out there have these features. I would equate this particular feature kind of to Wikipedia. It's kind of makes your data definition somewhat open source. And why do we do that? Why do we like Wikipedia? Well, it's because the world changes fast. Well, your data architecture in any company changes very fast. This is why data dictionaries tend to get outdated. But unless you have that interactivity, that participation, and this is what the tools of the interactive tools give you. Finally, search capability, very important. You want people to be able to find a particular data element and find out about it, what goes into it, what its potential impact is on reporting. You want to be able to find these things quickly and easily. We all know that search capability has come a long way. And in the same way that even in our daily use of the internet, for example, what I guess we would call dumb keyword searches are kind of rapidly becoming a thing of the past, and we can use natural language and phrase our queries that way. These same sorts of tools are available in data catalog platforms as well. I guess my final candidate for features, and this is kind of the dark horse, not the most exciting one, but very important, is because when you employ data catalog, you will need to reinterrogate and reharvest on a periodic basis, right? Again, all about making sure that you don't lose connection with what your actual data assets and data are, because it's changing all the time. Versioning. So you want to have a product that's capable of being able to, let's say, for example, freeze your production version while you work on your harvesting, and then set the stage to migrate your development version and into production. That's going to become very important, so that changing key elements of your data catalog, it becomes a process that's relatively orderly. So with that, I don't know, Eric, do you have any questions so far?
You're on mute.
Sorry, good point.
Oh,
So you talked about stakeholders. Give us some idea into some of the stakeholders that the average company, let's say an insurance company, for example, or a government agency, who would you want at the table in the early stages, Aaron, in your opinion?
Yeah, well, I think in an initial engagement where, we view that as kind of like an assessment. We might get a client might come in with kind of general needs around data management, data governance, or they might have a specific idea about data catalogs more specifically. So that initial engagement, there's probably, I would say, a lot of people, if you have a data governance staff, for example, those types of experts we would want to bring to the table. We would probably want a sampling of other data SMEs and just end users. And really, this is about the idea of getting to the pain points and finding out what they are. Finding out first of all, whether they're a good the company is a good candidate for a data catalog as a solution. They may not be. We may find that the pain points that the company is experiencing are more around, let's say, data quality or time to market, in which case that would point to maybe there's some underlying issues in terms of data architecture that need to be addressed and so forth. I would say, but in that initial go round, it's really about going and sitting down with the client and listening to what those pain points are. We would get from that, we would employ the matrix, for example, that Alla put up earlier. We would use that to determine, okay, and prioritize and out of that would become a prioritized list of requirements. And from there, we can use that and we could take our knowledge of the features that are available from the various vendors and hopefully engage a vendor search and find out and answer the question, if you will, which data catalog do you need?
Yeah, that sounds great. I'd like to go ahead and bring Kristi Gale into the conversation as well, because Kristi, you do a lot of client liaison work, and it's very important to communicate to the business side and the technical side what the process is going to look like, how much time it's going to take. I think Alla did a great job of really driving home that point that, again, the assessment is important whether or not you decide to go with a data catalog, because you're going to learn things, but you're also going to get a good idea of your current state and where you want to be. And you might even get some people jumping on board when they see what that current state looks like. But talk to us a bit about your experience in making sure that not only are you communicating to both sides, but they're actually listening and what you're saying is resonating.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Eric. So as Eric mentioned, my position with Enroll with Athena as a client liaison. So that includes project management, the communication, detailing the business requirements, and delivering on what those goals are. So most of what I'm going to be talking about, honestly, it's not rocket science, but it is critical. You know, people and processes can make or break some of these projects. I just looked yesterday. Gartner had published a research on the percentage of data governance projects that fail. If you want to take a guess at what that is with any organization, the percentage is like 80-90% of data governance projects. The data catalog falls under that data governance discipline. I mean, it's huge. I just think that's huge. And you think about, you know, what that means. It's lost time. It's lost money. There's an impact on employees as well. There are some employees that get frustrated and leave. And there are some employees that just get very skeptical because the project may have failed. And then a year or two later, someone brings up the notion again, yes, we do need some data governance. And they're like, you know, it didn't work 2 years ago. I just don't know if it's going to happen again, you know. So those are all some of the things that we encounter sometimes when we come in. But what Athena has done, it's put together this framework, a process, a proven methodology. And if we adhere to it, you know, plain and simple, it's going to work. We've had a lot of success with it. So not to undermine the people aspect and the process aspect of this, of any of these projects. So I don't plan to go through the entire process of what it looks like. I just want to hit on a few key points, some of which have already been mentioned, but the first key point is really just get everybody on board. And we've talked about that a little bit already, but you want people thinking the same, understanding what the project is and working towards the same goal. We typically do start at the top, but we're very transparent, and we would like it in our partner companies to be transparent as well. I mean, that's just a level of trust. Even Alla mentioned that, just the integrity, transparency, and accountability, that's huge. So we also get them to understand the importance of having a data catalog. And we talk with management. We tend to talk about the financial impact, what it's going to provide to the company, because we do get the question, you know, why do we even need this? I mean, and a lot of times we get that question from top management. And what we know from companies is that you can have as much as 70, 80% of your organizational data. It's either redundant, it can be obsolete, or it can be just kind of trivial, and poor data management, the strategies, they're costing these organizations time and money. And usually management, that speaks to management as far as why get on board with a data governance or data catalog project. And they also make decisions from a C-level suite. They make decisions based on data. So we want the data to be reliable, to be trustworthy, because they're making some big decisions based on the data that's given to them. With mid-level analysts, we speak to the ease of doing their job, more efficient. What took them 2 days is going to take them 2 hours now. And a lot of times we don't have to talk too much. They are the ones that are usually talking about the pain points and what's needed. So they're typically on board right away. We also spent some time talking with business units, because business units need to have accountability for their data and their actions regarding the input of data. We don't want anybody going rogue on this project. Sometimes when Athena comes in, we've seen where business units or individuals have gone rogue. They've already started entering data because they need it, and we totally get it. They need to report it at a certain level, but it only benefits them. When you look at that data from an overall or corporate perspective, it doesn't work because the definitions aren't consistent across business units. So first point is just getting everybody on board. The business users, like I said, we get them involved early. There are experts within the company, many participants on the call. You probably are the experts in your company. You know the data. If you don't have a data catalog, you either have a file folder on your computer that has your personal notes on it that you've been saving and working on for years, or it's all in your head. The data catalog is just in your head. You are the experts in the company. You're the ones that we totally want to get on board to help us shape the strategy of the project. It's very critical. The second main point, just from a people and process standpoint, we really recommend doing a pilot project. So this way you can go through the entire process on a much smaller scale. As Alla mentioned before, not boiling the ocean, we're just huge advocates of pilot projects. It lets everybody understand this, the process, the communication. You get to see the results earlier. And we spent some time choosing that pilot project as well. We don't just want to take a data set from start with A and go down to Z. We want to be very aware of what we're choosing. As Alla said, maybe domain, or work with data, critical data elements that go across the entire organization. We're all swimming in data, but there are very critical data elements that maybe it's only even a couple hundred within your company that are very critical and that you use. So you want to be very aware of what you're choosing for that pilot project, because you want to show success and measure that success at the end. And other components of people and processes are the team aspect or training or education. But the third point I wanted to make, and Alla touched on this as well, is measuring that success. So track the adoption rates, circle back to the businesses, look at those individuals or businesses maybe with low usage, and just to understand why, but celebrate your win. Publish the data, showcasing what it did, how it worked, because then you're gonna work towards another project or another set of data elements that you can work with from the original pilot project. So those are just the 3 high-level points that I just wanted to mention from a people and process standpoint that we tend to come up on. But like I said, with our methodology and what we've chosen to do with the process, we've been very successful with it. So we'd like to follow that.
Yeah, that makes complete sense in getting the all the people at the table. And then the pilot project. I like what you said, that we're all swimming in data, but there are certain data points that really do matter. So you want to focus on a pain point, and maybe I'll throw it over to Alla to comment on. That's something you're going to discover early in the process of talking to a company because they're probably going to mention something, maybe with a tone of frustration in their voice, and that's going to be your clue that this is a friction point and this is somewhere we need to start. What do you think, Alla?
Um, I would say the data elements probably wouldn't come first, but the conversation about pain points, I agree with you fully. And Kristi mentioned that this is one of the first conversations that we would like to have. And usually it is not limited to the stakeholders. It is not limited to one department. We would like to go as broadly as we can go for a project, and then kind of have a systematic approach based on that, because these pain points, basically, these are the leads of where the solution can focus.
Mm-hmm. We have a great question from an audience member, and maybe Alla or Aaron can jump on this. It's an excellent question. One of the attendees writes, talks about the meta content orchestration between where business, technical, operational, and informational content is created, updated, and deleted, CRUD, and how the data catalog is used in relation to that. For an example, data modeling tools can be an origination of meta content, which the data catalog receives. The point being, you have these different kinds of tools and technologies that come into play. Where do they fit in the process? Like a data modeling tool, for example, where does that fit in the process of a data catalog project? I guess maybe Aaron, I'll throw it over to you first. You do want to understand what tools the company has in place and use whatever tools they have in place. Can you kind of talk about how these other different types of tools that are adjacent but not necessarily core to data catalogs, how they can come into play in the whole process, Aaron?
Sure. I mean, I would be aware of the fact that, the automation that comes up front with things like harvesting and lineage, I would stress that it's to take care of the initial heavy lift, right? So you're typically going to be looking at databases, you're going to be looking at, and the products you will find, generally speaking, they will have dedicated bridges available so that, for example, for the most popularly used ETL types, ETL brands, if you will, a data catalog typically will have a bridge that would allow it to interrogate that particular type, that particular ETL platform. There are always going to be edge cases. There are going to be like a data modeling tool that might not fall under the umbrella of tools where you can actually just do kind of like more what we would just call straightforward harvesting. So there's going to be edge cases like that. And I think that every project is going to be different. I think that, interrogating some data sources, harvesting may bring you 90% of the way there. With other data sources, it may only bring you 10%, or you may actually have to do some of the, a significant amount of legwork.
Yeah, very interesting. Alla, do you want to comment on that at all?
Just from the perspective of selecting a data catalog, I think that the more complicated the data architecture and the more information you want to consume from the other types of tools, like data modeling tools and so on and so forth, you have to look at the data catalog and their capabilities in terms of the data consumption. In some cases, the tweaks can be made, but in general, this is the type of selection criteria that I would recommend to have. If there is a lot of metadata that is contained in the data modeling tools, this is what data catalog should be reading.
That's an excellent point. You want to figure out where you've captured that corporate wisdom. Sometimes it's in an Excel spreadsheet. Sometimes it's in a data modeling tool. Sometimes it's in a homegrown solution, for example. So really mapping that out is a big part of the early process, right, Alla?
Yes, no, I agree, and this comes down to understanding the architecture, or understanding the maybe metadata landscape, and what exists where, and what needs to be what needs to be taken into the data catalog.
Mm-hmm. If you would go back to that slide with your matrix on it, because I'd like to dive into that a little bit more.
Absolutely.
And maybe
Love
get some.
love going back.
And I love your signs of success too. I mean, there are also signs of failure which are people not showing up to work or being unhappy in general. But I
Um,
like the way you have all of these different features mapped out. And so with clients, you'll work through the different components, data discovery, how important is that? Data lineage, metadata curation capabilities, and you like to give a weight and a score to both, right? So the weight is what percentage overall, how important is this compared to others, and then the score is how well a particular vendor does in that category. And you made an interesting point as we prepared for this that you said if you have, let's say, 5 data catalog vendors you've chosen for your short list, and that is a big part of the process. Look at everything that's out there. What's your short list? Pick those, let's say 3 to 5, and then how many ever you choose, make that the scale that you use, right? So 1 to 5 or 1 to 3, depending. Maybe just talk about that a little bit and your experience of going through this process and how long it takes.
okay, so first the simple question. 5 is an arbitrary number here. The point I wanted to make is that you have to have the number large enough so that each of the vendors you're evaluating wouldn't end up with the same score.
Right.
So you need to give yourself a little bit of breadth. So this number needs to be larger or the same as the number of data catalog vendors that you are evaluating. So that from that perspective. And what was the second question, Eric? I'm sorry.
I think I was asking you also how long it takes. Like, how much time should you dedicate to this part of the process? Is it a week? Is it 2 weeks?
So this is a little long. Although, organization is everything, but where it takes time. If the requirements analysis is done upfront, then it's just scheduling and maybe absorbing the material that vendor provides with with their product. So if you think about going even through 5 vendors, immediately you're looking into 2 or 3 weeks probably, given everybody's schedule. And this is a best case scenario. So this is a bit of a lengthy process, but this advanced preparation and going through the important topics that matter for the projects would shave some of the time off it. Also, if you're working with a group of people, you need time for discussions. There is a lot of discussions involved in coming up with the final score. People need to submit their opinions, and so we are talking weeks, probably, that would go into it. I want to mention it again that data catalog vendors now pride themselves on standing up quickly, and so in the grand span of things, this is time well spent. There's the amount of discovery that is happening in these first stages of the implementation, not implementation even, but the planning process. It makes a tremendous impact on the data, the state of data maturity in the company as well.
Yeah. And Aaron, I'm going to throw a tough question over at you. I see policy and compliance integration as one of the features. We now have in the United States, I think I heard it's like 32 different states have been considering or actually passed some regulation around data privacy, data usage. Of course, in Europe, you have GDPR, which is an overarching policy around really data governance and how you use data and what you're supposed to do with it. But when you have 30 different states with 30 different policies, can we reasonably expect data catalogs to manage that policy disparity? In other words, things like data sovereignty, data usage from one state to another. Are data catalogs good enough these days, some of them, to be able to effectively manage that and help you avoid getting in trouble with regulators?
No, that's a very good question. I think that brings up a lot of complexity there. However, the data catalog tools that we've looked at will do things. For example, you can from an administrative point of view, you can segregate out people into different user groups. You could do that region by region, state by state, country by country, and then that way you can account for data security issues, differences in policy, things of that nature. You get into certainly things like masking. You might not want everyone from your entire company to be able to see sample data, for example, or the underlying data. And these types of things can be governed through the use of administering user groups for most of these products.
Yeah, and
Can
then
I-
oh, go ahead,
Can I
Alla.
add something?
Yeah, go ahead.
Okay, so so not every data catalog vendor would uh, have the features around the policy and compliance, but the ones that do allow for tagging. For example, for tagging for definitions, tagging for the critical data elements, or just data assets. With and you would tag a policy against that asset. And this is the type of association that they create. So whenever you're dealing with a term or you're dealing with a data asset, you see what policies are associated with it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's excellent. And then, Aaron, I'll throw another one over to you. That early harvesting you talked about, which is, I think, really what catapulted data catalogs into the prominent position they hold today, is the capacity to dynamically ingest data by scanning your information environment, pulling in metadata from various systems, flagging what could be personally identifiable information. That whole dynamic process is really a kickstart to getting a data catalog up and running. And then you mentioned that you need to periodically reharvest and relook for dimensions that have changed, new systems that may be available, things of that nature. Can you kind of walk through what that process looks like? Because as I understand it, what you do is you get a report from the technology and it allows you to kind of prioritize which systems to manage, where you may need to assign policies or not assign policies. That's a really big deal, that dynamic ingestion part. Talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, well, again, it is extremely important because in a data catalog platform, the idea is that you try to not lose connection with the underlying data assets. So obviously you need to reconnect with the underlying data architecture as it's changing. You don't want to get too out of whack, and that has been the downfall of data dictionary initiatives. What often will happen in a reharvesting, obviously your first go around is going to be the one that's, it's the biggest lift. When you do your second, your third pass, let's say you make it into a monthly workflow, a big help is if there's the ability to analyze the two, okay, your newly harvested data with what you have currently in production, and analyze the change. Okay, so you don't wind up having to reharvest everything from scratch. A good data catalog platform will allow you to kind of like take the incremental change, and then you can, sort through. Typically, with there's some curation involved but it's a much smaller effort typically as as an ongoing process than it is on the first go round.
Yeah, we got a couple really good questions from the audience, so let me kind of dive into some of these. I'll throw one over to Alla first, maybe. Let's see. Considering data points that matter and focusing on pain points, can you recommend certain data elements that could benefit from standardization? That's an interesting topic. So just as in general, working with a bunch of different clients, I'll throw it again at you. Considering data points that matter and focusing on pain points, can you recommend certain data elements that could benefit from standardization?
And is this for Alla or is this for me?
That's for Alla, yeah.
Oh, yes,
Sorry.
okay.
Okay, good. Standardization. What comes to mind immediately, like standardization, you probably you won't standardize all of the data elements, but something like the metadata, master data, and reference data would probably be, I would say they would be the best candidates if I would approach this from the point of view of standardization. So you would probably standardize the address fields, and they do a tremendous job in this area. There's a variety of tools that standardize addresses and postal codes and so on and so forth. But data catalog is in this category. They will also classify, like they will suggest, in some cases, in some tools, they will suggest classification, whether this is a PII, suggested PII, or not a PII at all. So I would globally, I would look at master data to standardize.
Mm-hmm. And it's interesting, and maybe I don't know, maybe I'll throw this one over to Kristi. I've noticed this. I heard it actually first from Alex Cangun of Athena, who said that MDM has become a dirty word, but now what people say is mastering data, right? Which is kind of the same thing. But what do you think about that? I mean, is this just a semantic issue, or were we talking about the same thing here?
Mm, Well, I would, on that particular question, I would agree with Alla. The only thing I would add to that is if you have different business lines that where you're going to create some type of party hub or combining data, that may also be some of the data elements that you want that could benefit from standardization, especially if you're combining, like you had said, address or name or anything like that, that's going to be combined in some type of party hub or customer hub.
Mm-hmm. Okay, good. And Ala, maybe I'll throw this one over to you. One of the attendees is talking about, given the high unsuccess rate for data governance projects, how do you ensure success over time? And they write, my observation is that self-service data consumption needs a huge mindset shift above IT capabilities. So yes, you need to have the technology in place or the capacity, the functionality, even if it's homegrown. But the point is here, you also need to really change the minds of people. And I guess this gets back to my earlier comment about opportunity cost of not at least exploring this from an organizational perspective. You're missing out on something. So the question is, how big is the mindset shift that needs to take place? And what are some thoughts you have about being able to get there? Is it really just getting through to the key stakeholders and getting them to understand that there needs to be an education, some upskilling, and a commitment to continue communicating with folks to get them using the technology? What do you think, Alla?
I think commitment is a key word.
Mm-hmm.
The start of a data governance program is usually the commitment to change from the C-suite executives, because it's their decision to invest the time and the money and their resources in the culture change, which actually needs to happen for successful data governance initiatives to take place. And so the way people do their job every day, this is the culture change. And I said before that data catalog is a tool, but this is just one tool. I would say the other tool is building a data governance organization. So building a structure around communication about data. If the goal is to build a data-driven culture, what is involved in it? Usually, the culture change that we are talking about, first of all, is the way the discussion, almost like the discussion is approached. Who is, usually there are no data stewards in the beginning. Usually there's no data governance board who makes ultimate decisions about data in the organization. All of these, creating all of this would become a tool into fostering a data-driven culture where the decisions can be made based on data. The data becomes so trustworthy. The process becomes so transparent. The level of accountability is such that overall the culture, the day-to-day operation of the company changes, hopefully for the better, and becomes more focused on the data and issues around the data.
Yeah, that's excellent. And we are just about out of time here, but I'm going to throw one more hard slider over at Aaron, as opposed to a curveball. I'm a big baseball fan. But you talked about doing the comparison before and after, getting two sets, making sure you're still on the same page. That strikes me as a function that could be aided by generative AI, which is very good at summarizing things, and it's very, very good at doing comparisons, like a comparison contrast of two documents. Does that make sense? Can you use some Gen AI to facilitate this process of finding disparities and finding alignment and things of that nature? What do you think, Aaron?
For the last question of the session, you may have stumped me there a little bit. However, I totally agree with you that it's exactly the kind of technology that could probably aid that process. I don't have any I don't have any detailed knowledge of what vendors may have taken advantage of that and implemented that. There's certainly some pretty sophisticated AI involved in generating the differences in the platforms I've seen. But generative AI, stay tuned.
Yeah, that's good stuff. Well, folks, thank you so much for your time and attention. Big thanks to the team over there at Athena Solutions, Alla, Zaykin, Kristi, Gale, and Aaron Wilson. We've got Alex Candu in the background too, I'm sure. So big thanks to him. Send me an email if you want to learn more about this stuff. We're going to be diving in over the next weeks and months, quite frankly, trying to understand the disparities between the different technologies and really nail down the criticality of the methodology and, as Alla said, the commitment. If you're going to go down this road, be committed, stay committed. There will be tremendous benefits to your organization. And as I've been saying for a while now, almost everything we do in this data space should now be viewed through another lens, which is a roadmap to AI. Because, folks, if you're going to be leveraging these new powerful foundational models, you want to make sure your data house is in order, your data is clean. I often tell people that training machine learning and AI models is kind of like raising kids. You want to be very careful what you expose them to, because if you expose them to the wrong things, it's going to get in there. And once they're trained, it's very hard to untrain. And with that, we will bid you farewell. Thank you so much for your time and attention, folks. We'll talk to you next time. You've been in the briefing room. Take care. Bye-bye.